What's up, guys? My name's Dynasty, and yes, we are back at it again today discussing Mortal Kombat because turns out that MKvsDC, despite being the arguably worst Mortal Kombat game of all time, it kinda changed the format of story modes in fighting games moving forward forever. At least for Mortal Kombat. And it turns out there was a recent interview that Ed Boon had with the guys over at IGN about this topic, where he reveals, initially at the time, Midway Games wasn't even on board with this idea. They kinda just wanted to stick to the traditional arcade ladder endings to tell the game's story. But once they got a glimpse of this whole cinematic-based story mode of animations and cutscenes, let's just say they were on board and they changed their minds quickly. But with that said, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into it, I want to say today's video is being brought to you by Ridge Wallet. The Ridge Wallet is light, sleek, and doesn't awkwardly bulge in your pocket or cause any weird discomfort. Chances are you're like Baraka and still using a wallet that was designed in the 90s. You know, carrying around some old receipts, gift cards, miscellaneous Outworld hotel keys. Just a mess. However, with the Ridge Wallet, you can hold up to 12 cards and still have room to carry some cash. There's over 30 different colors and styles to choose from, including burnt titanium and even carbon fiber. Stop being like Baraka and join the over 30,000 people who've actually left on average a 5-star review about their Ridge Wallet. There's even a lifetime warranty and a free 45-day test try. So head on over to ridge.com/dynasty and use code Dynasty for 10% off your order. And with that said, let's talk about the one saving grace of MKvsDC. So here is the article right here. This was again posted by the guys over at IGN. It reads, "How Mortal Kombat story mode changed fighting games forever. Mortal Kombat the movie, the game." And I highly suggest reading the full article. I'm just going to focus on Ed Boon's quotes, though. So, kicking things off, this was the idea about making the drastic change from just your typical arcade ladder endings to tell the story mode to this whole cinematic cutscene-based story mode we've become accustomed to. So, this quote reads, "We were really just trying to break the mold of fighting games with what's typically expected of them. And also, just because mixing Mortal Kombat and DC was such a dramatic, unexpected thing, we thought, okay, let's just really shake things up." Keep in mind too, this is going back to like maybe 2007, 2008, right before the game launched, and this is also the very last, I guess you can call like official Midway Games released Mortal Kombat game before, of course, they filed for bankruptcy, and Warner Brothers stepped in and bought the property. So that's the timetable of things here. So goes on to say, Ed Boon himself pitched the idea to the central groups at Midway Games, a team of talented artists, animators, and producers, but they weren't quite sold on it. Could you imagine that? Doubting Ed Boon? Not like he's the co-creator of Mortal Kombat or anything, but you know, what does he know? Ed Boon goes on to say it involved a ton of work, a ton of new tech that wasn't in place yet, in terms of streaming video while loading the next fight in, and a whole memory arrangement that we didn't have. And so it met with a decent amount of resistance, and not from the standpoint of, oh, we don't want to work, but it was more like, is this going to be cool? Really? How? This is a single-player game. People are just going to play it once and then be done with it. Now, that paragraph on the bottom reads, the team pitched several alternatives to Boon's ambitious plan, but he was adamant that it would work. He wanted to make people feel like they're watching a movie and participating in it. So again, they didn't think it'd be cool, went as far as to even pitch several different alternatives, but ultimately, Boon was like, I got game, and he stepped in and said, hey, it's gotta work. Trust me on this one. And I think it did. I mean, granted, as much as I loved, you know, Mortal Kombat Deception and Mortal Kombat Armageddon's story mode, you know, the Conquest mode, I gotta say, post MKvsDC, like MK9, MKX, MK11 story modes, they really are like watching movies, and they've only continued to get better. Even recently, with Mortal Kombat Aftermath, that is like its whole, you know, side story in itself, and that is just as good as the, actual story modes we've seen as of late. So, initially reading this and seeing that people were doubting it is crazy because it's been so good. You know what I mean? It's been so good. So, excerpt goes on to say the team showed Boon some motion graphics like you'd see in some fancy comic presentations where music and dialogue played against still images to tell a story. I remember experiencing some frustration with it because I was like, how are you guys not excited about this? And eventually, I just kind of forced it through. So it was one of the few times that I feel like I pitched an idea, people weren't excited about it, and I was like, no, you guys aren't going to kill this. This is going through. We're going to do this whether you're on board or not. And the rest is history. The rest is history. So, goes on to say, despite the initial resistance, Boon said that it only took one completed scene of a transition into and out of a fight for it to click in everyone's heads. One time was all it took, and they were like, yeah, Boon is a genius. It helped, too, that a number of people on the Midway team had backgrounds in film, animation, and script writing, and got to utilize a skill set that they never thought they'd get to use. Of course, they also had the benefit of working with DC. Ed Boon goes on to say, DC insisted that we have two writers help us so we didn't make their characters diverge from what they would do. So Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray were kind of consultant writers. They would read our drafts and say, no, Superman would say this, or Batman would never say it that way. They kind of kept us authentic to it. Ed Boon goes on to say, the dream for us was to be able to tell a proper Mortal Kombat story. MKvsDC was, you guessed it, MK meets DC. And so it was Batman and Superman and Scorpion, and the novelty was the crossover of the two things. When MK9 came out, it was like, oh, we're going to tell a Mortal Kombat movie. We're going to come as close as we can to making a Mortal Kombat movie. These stories that we've been telling through text, endings in the arcade, and other not as sophisticated forms of media, let's finally tell it in the cinematic. Again, Ed Boon knew what he was doing. One of the final quotes is this right here. It says, fighting games by definition need a certain amount of precision and practice and stuff that a number of casual players just don't want to invest the time to learn, and let alone be good enough at to play a random person online. And so, the online experience of just getting your ass kicked repeatedly was a turnoff for some people. So, the focus was, let's do a strong single-player experience. And that was, I think it was, it's at least 50% of the casual player appeal of our game, is this, the standalone single-player experience. And there you have it. That is the article for the most part, with everything that Ed Boon I thought was saying that was of note. It's crazy to think that, again, no one saw this coming or believed in it, and, Boon stuck to his guns, and it actually paid off. And it's cool because, obviously, to this day, seems like they still do value their single-player experience. I mean, like I just mentioned again earlier, Aftermath was, again, a single-player expansion of the story mode, a first of its kind, something we've never seen them do before, and I really do hope they continue to keep this mindset and just continue to grow with the content, because I know for me, at least, probably the greatest Mortal Kombat experience I've had was growing up for the first time playing the Deception Conquest mode. That was amazing. That was great. That was 100% single player, and I know a lot of people now still just grind out Towers of Time. There's an entirely new overhaul for the augments that just dropped that caters to a lot of the single player offline gameplay, so it's cool to see they're still doing this, but I really do hope come MK12 we continue to get the amazing cinematic-based, like, 8-hour story mode, plus more single-player content like the Towers of Time. Maybe the return of chess combat, motor combat. A few weeks ago, Ed Boon talked about that. Seemed like the door was still open potentially for that to make a comeback, so I just hope they continue to get back to the casual player who just maybe doesn't want to just go hop onto Combat League and get destroyed like I do all the time. But anyways, guys, that is all I got for y'all today. That is how MKvsDC pretty much changed the Mortal Kombat story mode for the better, I think, at least in my opinion. But guys, that's all I got for y'all today. What do you think of this? Of course, the full article will be linked down below. If you enjoyed the video, please take 1 second and drop a like on it. Subscribe for some more MK content here on the channel. Till next time, been your host, Boon Dynasty. Guys, please take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
See, I've been a fan of Dynasty for years now. GTA, MK, and Justice, I'm still down. Rapper meets gamer, I wonder how y'all feel now. That was just a setup, watch it get real now. Okay, so me and Sub-Zero was born in 92, and lyrically I inherited all his fighting moves. A lot of y'all still lost, don't have the slightest clue. The truth disappears in the smoke as if you find